I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
Put my hat up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
gotta be you.
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Morris?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? John.
Gotta be me and dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's a
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all and more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
Good morning. Welcome to today's show. Donnie Glover here. Today's guest will be Rodericka Applewhaite, Director of Black Media. We will be, for the White House, we will be discussing President Biden's State of the Union address last night. Good morning, Rodericka. How are you today?
I'm good. Doni, how are you?
I'm trying not to shake in my boots because this is such an important discussion. Can we just jump right into it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the president last night gave his the last State of the Union of his first term, and it's always a great opportunity for the president to directly message to the American people what he's accomplished and what he hopes to do over the next year. And last night, President Biden did exactly that. He spoke to Americans about the efforts to promote democracy abroad. He discussed the clear contrast between competing visions for the country and competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation. He touted his wins. He talked about the strong economic progress that he's brought about since day one of his term. He talked about accomplishments in manufacturing, clean energy, and the impacts that has had on Black and Brown communities. So it was a really good opportunity to just take it directly to the American people, but also really show Americans the contrast visually between an administration that has been focused on results and an opposing forces in Congress that has done everything in their power to stall it for political points. So this was a really good opportunity for the president to just talk directly to American people, and I think it resonated really well.
So let's start from the broader perspective, from a global perspective, when he discussed NATO and how Sweden recently joined NATO and acknowledged that Finland joined last year. What was the image he was attempting to portray for a broader democracy, a nation, a world with, just a better relationships? Is this in response to what Putin is doing with Asia, the Chinese, the North Koreans? Is this his way of sharing with us that we are just as strong on this side of the world as well?
Exactly. You're exactly right, Doni. That is exactly what the president was trying to communicate. He spoke about, the need to promote democracy. He spoke about the stability, the strength that there is in stability and being on the world stage as a country with a leader that people know will be consistent and predictable and always, fight for democracy. He opened up that contrast between him and the previous administration that specifically, said he did quote that he said Putin can do whatever he wants as far as it relates to Ukraine and their aggression with European states in general. And so, that's just President Biden has always been known as someone who is very strong on the foreign policy front, and so he really flashed that last night and showed American people really detailed the importance of that stability and for promoting democracy.
Let's go over to the Gaza Strip. It's been reported that the U.S. will be taking food directly and establishing a port, a place where they can directly drop off food and water to the people in the Gaza Strip. And this, it was noted last night that as the president was coming to the Capitol, he had to go through protesters, some people who were bringing attention to what's happening in Palestine, a number of approximately 28,000 people killed. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So, I think since October 7th, when we saw those devastating attacks at the hands of Hamas, ever since then, this administration and President Biden in particular has been very hands-on with trying to alleviate this conflict as quickly as possible. With as minimal casualties as possible. And so this is part of that ongoing effort by the president to move towards a ceasefire that releases hostages, as well as get aid to Gaza. The president has always been very clear that this is a conflict that impacts both innocent Palestinians and innocent Israelis. And so this is just another one of those efforts for President Biden to get aid to Gaza, which I will point out is what the pressure from pro-Palestinian groups and advocates have been calling for. And so, I think this is a demonstration of the fact that the president has been listening, but also making sure that he's making decisions that don't further escalate the conflict, but also get the results that he's looking for, because this is a priority to him as well.
Okay. I want to come to the border. Prior to last night's speech, and let me just say the president showed a lot more bite than the media portray. They portray him as Sleepy Joe, but we saw last night a president who was 81 years old and pretty darn vibrant. I mean, he was hanging with people much younger than him in terms of his level of energy. But so let's go to this border situation. I mean, a lot of us, we see what's happening in Arizona, what's happening in Texas. We talk about the wall, but last night I saw the president put some of the onus right back on Trump in terms of what hadn't been done and what he inherited. What do you think the president was trying to portray as it relates to immigration and the border?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're absolutely right on that. I mean, so the President Biden was very clear about the fact that a lot of the gridlock or just straight up refusal from congressional Republicans to come to the table is because, they're not taking directives from their constituents. They're not taking directives from their own conscience or their political leanings. They're taking directions from the previous president and using that to unilaterally stop the conversations for the legislation that they have been calling for years. And so it doesn't really make any sense. It's unbelievably antithetical to what they're calling for, what they've been advocating for. And, it's to the point that congressional Republicans are the ones that were willing to come to the table were frustrated by that. I mean, there was a point in the president's address last night where he was talking about the fact that he asked Congress to support his plan to provide equipment and officers to secure the border. This was a bipartisan agreement put forward by some Republicans in the Senate. And, while the rest of a particular side of the chamber was booing, Senator James Langford from Oklahoma, a Republican, was nodding and saying, that's true. We did make an attempt to come to the table, and for no other reason than, the previous president that no one's coming to the table. And so, President Biden was really smart, I think, to just clearly point out that it's not that it's that the previous president is pushing, putting a lot of pressure on that side of the chamber to stall wins for America just so that he can claim credit. And that's just not that's not leadership. And Americans deserve better.
Were you guys expecting Senator Langford to mouth "That's true"? I mean, were there any previous indications that Senator Langford would put a bullseye on his back with someone like President Trump watching this debate, this presentation, the State of the Union address? I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better gift.
I mean, I will say his team did not give us a heads up beforehand, but Senator Langford has always been pretty upfront as one of the leaders on this bipartisan issue. And so, I appreciate his candor in just very plainly helping us lay out that, this is not a both sides issue. President Biden has been more than willing to come to the table. He's offered a lot of provisions of this particular border bill that Republicans have previously called for and agreed to. But the second that they saw that there was some way to get political points out of it rather than actually fix a problem, that's when they backed away. So it's unfortunate, and at the end of the day, it's American people that are being shortchanged as a result.
What should the American people know about the border? Why are so many people coming into America? Is it because of the drugs and the violence that is happening in too many countries south of the border?
I think that's certainly part of it, which is, of course, very unfortunate. No one should, where you're born shouldn't have to determine, the type of outcomes that you have in life. And so, President Biden is obviously very sympathetic to that. He spoke about that in his speech last night, but he also spoke about the fact that the situation at the border is a logistical one that is exacerbated by Republicans refusing to really come to the table on immigration. Right now, it takes about 6 years to be seen for an asylum, to be evaluated as an asylum seeker. With the plan that President Biden is hoping to put forward in conjunction with certain congressional Republicans, that would shorten that timeline to 6 weeks, which means that, instead of taking the risk of coming and being, maybe turned away at the border 6 weeks later, it's now a 6-year situation that people feel like they can wait out. And so that really increases the amount of people that are attempt to come across the border every day.
Any thoughts on our sanctuary states, our sanctuary cities? I know in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams was asking for advance notice some months ago for any buses coming to New York. Well, how does this work in places like New York? I mean, certainly they're inundated with additional people. Your thoughts?
So I can't speak too specifically to that since I'm not in the government structure there. But I will say this, with going back to the point of trying to score cheap political points to the direct detriment of American people. Florida, for example, has spent millions on busing migrants to other states. It is an extreme burden on taxpayers. It would be cheaper to do what other states have been doing and attempting to process them and help them get on their feet. And so the fact that, this proves the point that, I think from the Republican standpoint, especially in the context of the pressure that the former president has put on a lot of Republicans, is to do whatever it takes to just keep someone from getting a win rather than actually fixing the problem, to the point that they're spending more money to make the problem worse than it is. And so, it's just unfortunate that that's happening. It's a huge burden on taxpayers. And that's why we need to actually come to the table on an immigration solution.
I have to ask you, on more than one occasion, I think it was Senator Rubio and other Republicans, they had this I don't know any other way to put it. They had this stinky face. Look, why? What were they so angry about? Do you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, like so the State of the Union is one of the most viewed events of the year, and so there's a value optically to looking like you don't support certain things at the right time, and clapping when it makes sense, all kinds of things. It's a visual show, and so
does any of this explain Marjorie Taylor Greene? I mean, certainly she. And I love Georgia. Of course, you're from Georgia. I went to school in Georgia, but she's not the kind of Georgian I want to remember. I mean, she had a MAGA hat on at the State of the Union.
Yeah, she did. That's you'll have to check with her on her style choices for the evening. But she's obviously open to dress how she pleases.
Sorry about that.
No, all good.
So what's happening with Marjorie Taylor Greene? Help me out.
Yeah, so I got nothing for you there. She's free to dress however she pleases. That's it.
Okay, so women, they voted Roe v. Wade. I mean, the Supreme Court, and I love the way the president shamed the Supreme Court last night. Any thoughts about this group of people who are supposed to look out for all Americans? I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, ever since Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, I think Americans have been very loud and clear about the fact that they emphatically support a right to choose, and I think we've seen that play out in the decisions they've made in the elections following, supporting ballot initiatives to codify Roe v. Wade in specific states. I think, for a long time, I used to work at Emily's List, which is a organization that supports pro-choice Democratic women who are running for office. The entire time I was there, we were kind of sounding the alarm on, hey, if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, you don't even know the implications that will unfold as a result. It won't stop just at access to abortion. It will impact other things like IVF, birth control, and just really open the floor for a huge step backwards in American progress, especially for women, but for families in general, just Americans in general. And so, I think when I was at Emily's List, a lot of people were like, yeah, whatever, this is a law this is a decision, Supreme Court decision that's been on the books for, 60 plus years. But, in 2022, what we warned about finally did happen. And you are seeing the results now. In Alabama, IVF was the jurisprudence surrounding IVF was had a lot of hospitals and care centers nervous. And so they decided to just ban it out of fear of being prosecuted for providing care. And care that creates families. Like this is, I can't think of anything that is more pro-life, if you want to use that term, than IVF. These are families that are trying to have children. And so, I think Republicans are absolutely, and have, as they've been since 2022, the dog that caught the car. And you can see them scrambling as a result of that. And so this is something that Americans will continue to be mad about. This is something that, Alabamians, people in the South, probably not the biggest fans of the president, but seeing seeing implications that he was warning about, and saying, you know what, this is a little too extreme for me.
I see. I'm concerned that women are voting against their own interests by supporting former President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak specifically to their political decisions. Certainly not for this election, as I'm a servant of the American people at the White House. But I will say that I think Americans are absolutely paying attention to what's happening. I think they're listening to the fact that Republicans, especially in Congress, still continue to call for a nationwide ban on abortion. This is something that Americans are going to continue to think about as the implications of Roe v. Wade being overturned continues to play out in their states and communities.
You being the director of Black media, certainly last night you saw the African American, I think he was a teacher, who the president applauded. He talked about student loan forgiveness. Quite often when I see the Trumpsters, the MAGA, and the African Americans I see standing behind him, there seems to be a different spirit. And I don't want to get too judgmental, but you kind of wonder about some of these guys. But nonetheless, this teacher was celebrated last night. Tell me about how important student loan forgiveness and President Biden's efforts towards helping students, helping American education, how important they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So the gentleman you're talking about is Keenan Jones from Plymouth, Minnesota. He's a public middle school teacher in Minnesota's Twin Cities. And in April of last year, he wrote an email to President Biden thanking him for his loans being forgiven. He was in the public service loan forgiveness program, which is supposed to forgive the rest of your debt after you've paid for 10 years. But for a whole lot of reasons, including a previous administration that did not value actually, giving people what they paid into, President Biden has worked, and Secretary Miguel Cardona with the Department of Education have worked tirelessly to actually clear these rolls and get people the relief that they earned. And so with this, Keenan Jones is one of 800,000 public service individuals, so nurses, police officers, and social workers and service members who have had their loans forgiven under this program since President Biden took office. And to a broader point, he's part of the almost 4 million Americans that have had their student loan debts forgiven to the tune of $138 billion. So this is a really important thing for President Biden to highlight. I think it's even more pointed still that President Biden, that Keenan Jones is a Black man, because this is an issue that impacts Black Americans in particular. They're more likely to take out student loans. It is a huge the degrees that they earn are a huge source of upward economic mobility, and it's a wealth builder for Black families and households. And so to just really illustrate that story so clearly was a really powerful point last night.
So, Rodericka, I've tried to be fair, but I got to ask you a question. These are straight. This question here is straight from the streets of Baltimore, and I might as well throw in Morgan State University. Do you think this administration will ever attempt to tackle the topic of reparations?
So President Biden has been very emphatic about his support for a congressional study to uncover the impacts of reparations and how a program like that could be implemented. It has been introduced, I think, every year in Congress since he has been in office. And he's been very supportive about that. He believes that this is something that Congress would have to decide on, since Congress controls the purse. And so he's been very upfront about that, and would support a study, and is very eager to see what findings it would put forward.
Okay, and I know you have to go, but I have to get in this one most important question. Does your mom say you're doing a good job?
When I explain to her what my job is, yes.
What is your job, for those who do not know?
Sure. I'm the director of Black media at the White House. So it is my job to work hand in hand with Black outlets such as yours to make sure that we are reaching Black Americans where they are and through the news outlets and sources that they consume. It's really important to us, everyone at the Biden-Harris administration, to highlight the accomplishments that the president has secured for Black Americans. And so it is my job to make sure that Black outlets are aware of opportunities to talk directly to White House officials about the work that's being done here.
And for those of us who are African American, you would have us also understand that we have cousins in Latino and Caribbean communities. I mean, when I think back to your Black History Month events, I learned something. I never heard of Simma Funk, for instance.
Yeah, he's a Latino, Afro-Latino singer, very successful. Everyone's very happy to have him here.
And he's been to Morgan State University, but we are much broader people than we realize. We don't just speak English. We don't just come from the 50 contiguous states within these borders. We have Latino roots. We have Caribbean roots. Why was that important? And even you've got to comment on Descendants Day. I mean, that was absolutely the best.
It was awesome. Yeah, it was a real honor to have a front row seat to all of the events that the White House and the Office of Public Engagement put off last month for Black History Month. But to your first question, America and Black America it's a patchwork, it's a tapestry, and it's one that deserves to be elevated. And so, I very much appreciate that this White House took the time to honor my Afro-Latino roots, my Afro-Caribbean roots, and show that, we're not a monolith. We shouldn't be. We don't have to be. And it's really important to uncover the full history that makes us so special and unique, and and drives the culture around the world, and drives a lot of progress in this country. And so it was really, really cool to be a part of.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us, and I'm so grateful that this White House understands the need to embrace Black media. We've had access that we just did not get in the years prior with the last president. Any final thoughts?
No, I think that's it. It's always a pleasure to be on. It's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to talk to Black Americans about the work we're doing here and the work that I'm doing for myself, frankly, because I'm in the community too. And so, it's always great to be on. I would love to be on again if you'll have me.
We'd love to have you. Rodericka, Applewhaite, we appreciate you. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks, Doni. You too. Bye.
Yes, ma'am. So there you have it, folks. Rodericka Applewhaite, Director of Black Media. We'd love to get your thoughts, your sentiments. Nonetheless, thank you for joining the Emmy-nominated Donnie Glover Show, and have a great weekend. Good morning, world.